Inside the massive lava cavern, two teams suddenly collided head-on. In the blink of an eye, the intense animosity between the enemies erupted into a killing intent so thick it caused the temperature in the cavern to plummet. The murderous aura howled like a violent wind, sweeping through the entire cavern. Haha, what a small world. You little brats actually dare to show up in front of me, Master Dong. Stepping forward in the lead of one team, Dong Shan sneered with a menacing expression as he glared at Mu Chun, Wen Qingxian, Luo Li, and the others. Didn't you run away like a stray dog not long ago? Now you dare act all arrogant. Wen Qingxian sneered coldly, mocking them without hesitation. You. Dong Shan's eyes widened in fury, the killing intent in his gaze almost palpable. However, Wen Qingxian ignored him completely, her sharp, cold eyes bypassing Dong Shan to focus on a man standing beside him, whose hair burned like fire. Wu Tong, your Wu family really hasn't changed, still as vile as ever. Back then, you used every trick in the book to steal the information about this ruin from my Wen family, and now you've sold our whereabouts to others. When Qingxuan's voice rang out sharply, the fiery-haired man, Wu Tong, smiled faintly and replied, all is fair in war. If your Wen family couldn't protect your secrets, don't blame others for stealing them. He paused, casting a glance at Mu Chun and the others, and grinned playfully. Besides, we're competitors now. Isn't it only natural to use a few tricks? His eyes lingered on them, before he smirked and continued. And let's not forget, you've gathered some help too. Though, in the end, you'll find these helpers will be of no use. Bold words. Long Xiang's eyes flashed with fury when he saw how Wu Tong was dismissing Mu Chun, about to speak out. But Mu Chun stopped him, glancing at Wu Tong. The man radiated immense spiritual power, the pressure around him shaking the surrounding space, signaling his overwhelming strength. Clearly, Wu Tong was a genuine Earth Supreme at the Great Perfection stage. The two teams facing off were made up of Dong Shan's Demon Slayers and Wu family members. On the surface, the enemy team boasted two Earth Supremes at Great Perfection. On their side, the only visible power was Ling Shi, a high-ranked Spirit Array Grandmaster, with Wen Ziyu and Long Xiang being at the half-step Great Perfection level. So, on paper, the enemy's lineup was evidently stronger. However, Wen Qingxian knew this too, but showed no fear. She was likely hiding some cards up her sleeve. Her face was as cold as frost, yet she didn't engage in a war of words with Wu Tong. Instead, her sharp eyes were drawn toward the depths of the cavern. There, at the far end, stood a stone platform. On it was a delicate, butterfly-shaped bronze alchemy furnace, flames seemingly burning inside it. Mu Chun, that alchemy furnace is the one left by the spirit butterfly pill immortal. It holds her legacy, and if we manage to obtain it, we can inherit her many alchemy techniques. Oh, Mu Chun looked at the bronze furnace with some surprise, but he wasn't particularly moved. He had little interest in alchemy, and at this moment, he didn't have the energy to practice it anyway. I want to obtain the alchemy legacy of the spirit butterfly pill immortal, Wen Qingxian said earnestly. Mu Chun was taken aback and looked at her. You also practice alchemy? Haha. Qingxian is currently the strongest alchemist in our Wen family. If she gets the spirit butterfly pill immortal's inheritance, her alchemy skills might even rival those of the Flame Emperor from the Boundless Fire Domain in the future, Wen Ziyu said with pride. Mu Chun was stunned. He remembered that Wen Qingxian hadn't shown much interest in alchemy before, but now, she had become a skilled alchemist. Still, he was only surprised for a moment. After all, even he had taken on the role of a battle formation master, so it made sense that Wen Qingxian would be an alchemist. If you want it, then the inheritance is yours, Mu Chun said with a smile and a nod. No one here practiced alchemy, so even if they obtained it, it wouldn't serve much purpose. Upon seeing Mu Chun unhesitatingly offer such a precious legacy, Wen Qingxuan's eyes flickered, and the gaze of Wen Ziyu and the other powerful members of the Wen family towards Mu Chun was filled with gratitude. After all, if it had been another team, internal strife might have erupted over the uneven distribution of spoils. Thank you, Wen Qingxian murmured softly, then added, but I can't let you suffer. For the medicinal resources we gain, you'll get 80%, and we'll only take 20%. Earlier, the division had been 50-50, But now when Qin Xian, in compensation, had conceded another 30%. Mu Chen nodded in acknowledgement, not refusing. He knew well enough that when Qingshuan's strong-willed nature wouldn't allow her to feel at ease unless she made this concession. Starting to divide the spoils right in front of us? When Qin Xian, are you in such a hurry? At that moment, Wutong's voice came with a hint of mockery. He looked at Wen Qin Xian with a half-smile. With your high-level grandmaster and 2 near-perfect great perfection experts, you should be lucky to leave here alive. And you still want to take our treasures? Dong Shan sneered. In a hurry? We'll find out after the battle. Wen Qin Xian replied coldly. In the next moment, she suddenly formed a hand seal. As the seal changed, dark red spiritual light erupted from her body. Bloodline divine ability, bloodline amplification technique. Spiritual light surged as Wen Qin Xian lightly bit her tongue, spitting out a mouthful of essence blood that merged with the glowing light. Instantly, several blood-red rays shot out, piercing straight into Wen Ziyu's and the necks of several other strong members of the Wen family. Boom. At that moment, a brilliant spiritual light erupted from Wen Ziyu's eyes. His spiritual power soared rapidly, and within a few breaths, he broke through his limits, reaching the level of perfect Earth Supreme. Even the other Wen family experts saw their spiritual power increase significantly. Although they didn't achieve great perfection like Wen Ziyu, they were still nearly 50% stronger than before. Wen Qin Xian had actually enhanced the overall strength of the Wen family experts in one fell swoop. Witnessing this scene, not only did Wutong and Dong Shan's expressions change slightly, but even Mu Chen, Ling Shi, and Luo Li were all staring at Wen Qin Xian in shock. None of them had expected her to possess such a hidden ability. Bloodline divine ability? Luo Li couldn't help but exclaim. This unique ability, said to be born from one's bloodline, often lacked direct combat power, but its auxiliary effects were incredibly potent. However, the probability of such bloodline abilities appearing was extremely rare, and they only worked for those with the same bloodline. Because of this, such abilities were very rare in the Great Thousand Worlds. No wonder Wen Qin Xian, despite only being an Upper Earth Supreme, holds such a high position in the Wen family. Even when Ziyu listens to her, Mu Chen finally realized. He now understood why Wen Qin Xian wasn't afraid of Wutong and the others. With this bloodline amplification technique, she could raise the team's overall strength by an entire level. At least now, Wen Ziyu had the strength to directly challenge someone at great perfection. After using the bloodline technique, when Qingshuan's delicate face grew pale, clearly showing that this technique came with some toll on her own well-being. No wonder the family elders always say that as long as the Wen family has Wen Qin Xian, they'll become famous among the many superpowers of the Great Thousand Worlds. I never imagined you possessed such a bloodline ability. Wutong's expression darkened completely. His eyes were now filled with intense killing intent. While this bloodline ability didn't benefit Wen Qin Xian much personally, it could significantly boost the overall strength of her team. In a large-scale battle, such an ability would ensure an overwhelming victory. Too bad. This time, the phoenix of the Wen family will probably be buried in these ruins. As soon as Wutong's words fell, 2 figures in gray robes suddenly stepped forward, their cloaks shattered. On their bodies, ancient runes were carved, each one embedded like chains into their flesh and bones. Their eyes were blood-red, devoid of any emotion, like beasts. They let out low growls from their throats, and the runes on their bodies burst into a crimson glow. Creak. Their bodies began to swell at a speed visible to the naked eye. Within a few breaths, they stood like small giants within the massive lava cavern. A violent surge of spiritual energy erupted from within them like a storm. That surge of spiritual power had clearly reached the level of perfect Earth Supreme. For the sake of this ruin, I brought out nearly all of the Wu family's top martial attendants. Even if they're ruined after this battle, I believe it's worth it, so long as we claim the ruin. Wutong tilted his head, eyes fixed coldly on Wen Qin Xian as he sneered. Besides, a phoenix of the Wen family will die alongside them. Wen Qin Xian and Wen Ziyu's expressions shifted slightly. This move from the opponent was indeed ruthless. This way, the other side now had 4 perfect Earth Supremes in their ranks. It seemed the Wu family had truly gone all in for this ruin. If things go south, retreat first. Wen Qin Xian took a deep breath and said to Mu Chen, Luo Li, and the others. The legacy was important, but not more than their lives. Mu Chen smiled faintly upon hearing that. Then, he turned his gaze toward the 2 martial attendants radiating violent energy. His slender hand slowly clenched into a fist, crackling with energy. What he said next, however, startled Wen Qin Xian, Wen Ziyu, and the others. I'll handle those two martial attendants. Qingxian, you focus on retrieving the legacy. You will. When Mu Chun said that, Wen Qingxian, Wen Ziyu, and the rest stared at him in disbelief. They hadn't expected that the usually reserved Mu Chun, who had hardly made a move along the way, would choose this moment to challenge two perfect Earth Supremes. Right now, Mu Chun was only at the strength level of an upper Earth Supreme. Can you handle it? Wen Qingxian couldn't help but ask. Though she had always suspected Mu Chun was hiding his true strength, at most she thought he might be able to hold his own against one perfect Earth Supreme. Never two. You shouldn't ask a man that kind of question, Mu Chun replied with a teasing smile. Wen Qingxian was momentarily stunned. Then, her delicate face flushed red, and she shot him a glare, snapping. You want to die or something? Mu Chun chuckled, and after easing the tension a bit, he turned to Ling Shi. Sister Ling Shi, hold off Wu Tong for now. You don't have to beat him, just keep him occupied. Wu Tong was undeniably powerful, stronger than an average perfect Earth Supreme. Even Ling Shi might not be able to defeat him outright. But with her mastery as a Spirit Array Grandmaster, restraining him shouldn't be too difficult. All right. Ling Shi nodded slightly. From within her sleeve, her jade-like hands glimmered with spirit light as countless spirit seals rapidly formed. I'll take care of Dongshan, Wen Ziyu said. Though he had only been at the half-step great perfection stage before, with Wen Qingxuan's enhancements, his current strength was no weaker than a perfect Earth Supreme. Luo Li, lead the rest of the One family's forces and intercept the others. Luo Li nodded gently. Aside from Wu Tong, Dongshan, and the two martial attendants, the rest of the enemy forces were merely at the upper Earth Supreme level, well within their capacity to stop. Move out. With everyone's opponents assigned, Mu Chun didn't hesitate any longer. The amusement in his eyes vanished in an instant, replaced by a piercing sharpness. The next moment, he pushed off with a toe, and his figure shot forward like a streak of light. As he soared through the air, he struck with a palm. A vast surge of spiritual power blasted out, enveloping the two martial attendants with blood-red eyes. A fool courting death dares to take on both of the Wu family's top martial attendants alone. Wu Tong was momentarily stunned, then sneered coldly, his voice laced with icy disdain. Those martial attendants had long been stripped of emotion, leaving behind only the instinct to kill. Once they entered battle mode, they would not stop until their opponent was utterly torn apart. Even a perfect Earth Supreme would be hard-pressed against such killing machines. Yet Mu Chun, with only the strength of an upper Earth Supreme, thought he could take them both on? To Wu Tong, this was nothing short of suicide. Off to the side, Dongshan shook his head in pity. He had originally intended to capture Mu Chun alive and make him wish for death. But now, it seemed the boy wouldn't even leave behind a corpse. Roar. As Mu Chun's spiritual energy enveloped the two martial attendants, they immediately reacted. A murderous roar erupted from their throats, and the violent spiritual energy surged wildly out of them. Boom. The two figures, resembling small giants, charged forward like ferocious beasts, recklessly rushing directly toward Mu Chun. The momentum was so overwhelming that if they collided with someone, even a perfect Earth Supreme would be forced to spit blood and retreat. Faced with the brutal assault of the two martial attendants, Mu Chun's figure suddenly paused. Then, he nimbly retreated, clearly intending to dodge their attack. Roar. The two martial attendants immediately pursued, swinging their fists, their blood-red spiritual energy almost becoming solid, filled with murderous intent. They slammed towards Mu Chun with unmatched brutality. Mu Chun continued to retreat under their relentless assault. Wu Tong, Dongshan, and the others watched Mu Chun's continuous retreat, their sneers growing more pronounced. Originally, they thought Mu Chun was showing off and must have some skill, but seeing the current situation, it was clear that he would soon be crushed into dust by the two martial attendants. Deal with them. Wu Tong raised his palm and waved it lightly, his eyes indifferent as he looked toward Wen Qingxian and the others. Boom. Behind him, the powerful figures of two teams erupted with overwhelming spiritual energy. In the next moment, beams of light shot out, charging directly toward Wen Qingxian and the others. Is Mu Chun really all right? Wen Qingxian asked, her concern evident as she watched Mu Chun being pushed back again and again. Don't worry, he's not the type to act recklessly, Luo Li smiled and reassured her. She then nodded to several strong members of the Wen family, and in an instant, several beams of light shot out, blocking the incoming attackers. I hope Brother Mu won't get hurt. At this point, Wen Ziyu sighed. They wanted to help Mu Chen, but they were no longer in a position to do so. With that, he focused his mind, his figure moved, and he appeared in front of Dong Shan, blocking his path. Heh, with just you? You think you can stop me, Dong Shan? Dong Shan sneered when he saw Wen Ziyu before him. The murderous aura radiating from his body caused the surrounding air to freeze. Having lived on the sacred Abyss continent for many years, Dong Shan had experienced countless life and death battles. His combat experience was immense, and just facing him, even ordinary strong people would feel their courage falter and hesitate to engage. However, Wen Ziyu was a prodigy of the Wen family. His expression turned serious, and he spared no effort as he activated the vast spiritual energy within him. With a firm grip, a black longsword appeared in his hand. Ancient light patterns flickered across the blade, exuding an extremely sharp aura. This sword was a high-grade sacred artifact. Holding the sword, Wen Ziyu's expression gradually became calm, his eyes sharp as blades, locking onto Dong Shan. Humph. Dong Shan's eyes narrowed when he saw this and gave a cold snort. High-grade sacred artifacts were rare, and even after struggling for so many years, he had never possessed one. These people from powerful families really made him angry. Dong Shan's palm swept through the air, and a blood-red giant blade materialized. The blade was also saturated with a murderous, bloody aura. This sword was a sacred artifact too, but it was only a mid-grade one. Swish. Dong Shan gripped the large blade and, in the next moment, appeared directly in front of Wen Ziyu, the massive blade carrying an endless wave of killing intent as it slashed down fiercely. Wen Ziyu immediately met the strike with his sword, and in an instant, a storm-like wave of spiritual energy exploded outward. My opponent is you? In the massive lava cavern, the battle was in full swing. Wutong looked at Lingxi with a smile and said, What a beautiful woman. What price did the Wen family offer to have you help them? I can pay double. However, Lingxi merely smiled faintly in response to his teasing. Then why don't you offer a tempting price? Wutong chuckled but, in the next moment, his gaze turned icy. His figure shot out like lightning, and with a punch, his vast spiritual energy transformed into a massive spiritual energy fist imprint, violently crashing toward Lingxi. You really think I'm foolish enough to delay time with a high-level spirit array grandmaster? Wutong was extremely astute, instantly seeing through Lingxi's intentions. After all, when a spirit array master engages in combat, they require some time to prepare their powerful spirit arrays. A massive fist print whistled through the air, but Lingxi's delicate face remained calm. She flicked her slender jade finger lightly, and immediately, the space before her twisted. In the next moment, a spirit array shot into the sky, transforming into a river of spiritual energy that clashed head-on with the spiritual energy fist print. Boom. A deafening sound echoed as the river of spiritual energy collapsed, but the shattered water clung to the spirit fist print like a viscous liquid, quickly corroding it into a massive river water. 9 Dragons Water Spirit Array. The river of spiritual energy surged, and at that moment, Lingxi performed a series of dazzling hand seals. Wutong watched in astonishment as the water dragons he had shattered earlier were now transformed into countless spirit seals. These numerous spirit seals quickly merged into the void, then, at an incredible speed, formed into an enormous black water spirit prison array. The array resembled a water prison, enveloping the entire space, and Wutong found himself trapped at the deepest part of this prison. High-rank Grandmaster Spirit Array, Black Water Spirit Prison Array. Boom. As he continued to retreat, Mu Chen was eventually approached by a martial attendant. A brutal fist, turning into a stream of light, viciously slammed toward Mu Chen's head. In Mu Chen's eyes, a surge of crystalline energy swirled, and a floating pagoda appeared before his vision. At the same time, the spiritual energy inside him erupted without reservation. Boom. He threw a punch, directly colliding with the martial attendant's ferocious strike. The space shattered as the martial attendant staggered back several steps, while Mu Chen was forced back more than 10 steps. His fist was faintly red. Boom. Suddenly, the space behind him warped, and another martial attendant appeared out of nowhere, sending a vicious punch toward the center of Mu Chen's back. However, this time, Mu Chen didn't dodge. Instead, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He extended his palm, pointed toward the martial attendant behind him, and swiftly made a hand seal. Boom. The space exploded in a burst of red light, and within it, countless spirit seals flickered. The overwhelming crimson light spread across the sky, forming a sea of flames. The terrifying heat began to rise. The martial attendant was immediately engulfed by the red space. Mu Chen's eyelids flicked up, and he glanced at the enraged martial attendant. He then softly murmured, "Blazing sovereign array." Boom. The space seemed to transform into a world of magma, and within it, a massive crimson shadow slowly stood up. It resembled a fearsome creature birthed from a volcano, exuding an aura of unparalleled power. The crimson magma space was filled with wild and scorching spiritual energy. In the midst of it, a colossal crimson figure rose, enormous beyond measure. With each breath, waves of fire surged, scorching the very fabric of space. This immense figure was the spirit shadow summoned by the blazing sovereign array. Formed purely from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, its power was immense. Even a superpower at the perfect Earth Supreme stage would find it a formidable opponent. The heat wave swept through the lava cavern, causing the temperature to rise dramatically. Meanwhile, the commotion caused by Mu Chen immediately attracted the attention of others. As they saw the blazing sovereign array, their expressions shifted. Is that a high-rank Grandmaster Spirit Array? When Qingxuan's phoenix eyes widened in disbelief as she looked at Mu Chen. To her surprise, this guy was also a high-rank Spirit Array Grandmaster. No wonder he had the confidence to intercept two top-tier martial attendants. It turns out he had such a trump card. This guy. When Qin Xian bit her red lip lightly, her gaze somewhat complicated. Back during the 5 Academies War, Mu Chen's strength was indeed formidable, but he wasn't much stronger than her at that time. Several years later, when they met again, although when Qin Xian was astonished by Mu Chen's strength as an Upper Earth Supreme, it was still within her acceptable range. But now, she never expected that Mu Chen's Upper Earth Supreme strength was just a facade, and the power he had revealed was likely just the tip of the iceberg. Faced with such rapid progress from Mu Chen, even someone as proud as Qin Xian felt somewhat discouraged. This guy, he's truly a freak. In the depths of the Blackwater prison array set up by Ling Shi, Wu Tong's eyes narrowed as he watched Mu Chen's direction. When he saw the blazing sovereign array, his brow furrowed tightly. Clearly, Mu Chen's move had exceeded his expectations. This kid does have some tricks up his sleeve. But even if you're a high-rank Spirit Array Grandmaster, you'll never be able to withstand the two top-tier martial attendants of my Wu family. A dark, cold expression passed over Wu Tong's face. The two martial attendants possessed the power of perfect Earth Supreme, and it was impossible for Mu Chen to defeat them just with a high-rank Grandmaster Spirit Array. Moreover, at this moment, only one martial attendant was trapped in the array. The other martial attendant would soon launch a fierce attack, leaving Mu Chen no energy to control the array. And once a spirit array is left without a controller, its power would decrease by several folds, allowing the martial attendant to easily break out. By that time, Mu Chen would once again fall into the deadly assault of the two martial attendants. This spirit array is a bit troublesome, Wu Tong muttered as he retracted his attention. He glanced at the Blackwater prison-like spirit array around him. Though its offensive power wasn't strong, it had the effect of creating a prison, trapping him and preventing him from using his full range of methods to break it. This woman seemed to be intending to just tie him up. Wu Tong's eyes flickered slightly, and his peripheral vision caught sight of the blazing alchemy furnace deep within the cave. A mysterious glint passed through his gaze. Boom. As soon as the blazing sovereign giant shadow took form, it directly launched a fierce attack at the martial attendant trapped in the spirit array. The giant fist swung with fire-red waves, charging violently toward the martial attendant. Boom. The martial attendant, who showed no fear, met the attack head-on, and instantly, the two clashed. The violent shock waves from their battle shook the entire vast cave. As the battle inside the spirit array erupted, the other martial attendant charged fiercely toward Mu Chen, his immense spiritual power gathering like an ocean in his fists. Each punch held the power to shatter the heavens and earth. In Mu Chen's eyes, the sacred floating pagoda shone brightly, converting all his spiritual power into crystal spiritual energy, and he retaliated with a fierce punch. On his arm, countless crystal-like patterns appeared. Boom. Boom. The two figures collided violently, causing the space to tremble. For a moment, the battle seemed exceptionally intense. However, as Mu Chen became entangled, the blazing sovereign array, just as Wu Tong had predicted, saw its spiritual light weaken slightly. The blazing sovereign giant shadow was driven back by the martial attendant. But just as this scene unfolded, Mu Chen smiled faintly, formed a seal with one hand, and the space behind him rippled. A figure in white robes, resembling Mu Chen, suddenly appeared and landed within the blazing sovereign array, sitting cross-legged to control the array. With the appearance of the white-robed Mu Chen, the blazing sovereign array erupted with a blinding red light. The blazing sovereign giant shadow roared and immediately reversed the situation, pushing the martial attendant back and gaining the upper hand. Once the spirit array stabilized, Mu Chen focused his attention on the martial attendant before him. From their earlier clash, he had already realized that, although with the boost from the sacred floating pagoda, he could now directly face a perfect Earth Supreme expert. He was still slightly at a disadvantage. After all, no matter what, there is quite a significant gap between an Upper Earth Supreme and the perfect Earth Supreme. A regular Upper Earth Supreme would probably face life-threatening danger if they encountered a perfect Earth Supreme within 10 exchanges. The fact that Mu Chen was able to face this perfect Earth Supreme martial attendant head-on, without even using his Supreme Dharmakaya, and hold his ground to such an extent, was no small feat. If one can't win, then use two. Mu Chen smiled faintly as he watched the martial attendant charge at him once more. His body swayed, and suddenly, another Mu Chen in a black robe appeared beside him. The two of them threw their fists simultaneously, and the vast spiritual energy they unleashed created a storm in front of them, the air itself violently exploding. Bang! The two fists collided hard with the martial attendant once again. But this time, it wasn't Mu Chen who was forced back. Instead, the martial attendant was sent flying, staggering backward from the force. In the distance, Dong Shan, who was in the midst of a fierce battle with Wen Ziyu, caught sight of this scene. His expression changed in shock as he stared at the three identical Mu Chens. He couldn't comprehend why the spiritual shadow Mu Chen created seemed to have the same strength as his real body. Humph, take care of your side. Just as he was distracted, a cold laugh echoed, followed by a flash of cold sword light tearing through the space. It struck Dong Shan's chest like lightning, leaving a streak of blood. Brat, you're asking for death. Injured by the sudden strike, Dong Shan's face twisted with rage. Gripping his large blade, he let the murderous aura surge and transformed into boundless sword light, overwhelming Wen Ziyu. Inside the massive lava cavern, the wild spiritual energy surged wildly. If this cavern had not been left behind by the spirit butterfly pill immortal, it would have been reduced to nothingness by the fierce battle by now. Qin Xian, hurry up and seize the legacy. As Mu Chen suppressed the two martial attendants, he immediately sent a transmission to Qin Xian. When Qin Xian nodded slightly and without hesitation, withdrew from the battlefield. She transformed into a streak of light and flew toward the deepest part of the cavern, where a cauldron stood. She knew that Mu Chen and the others were buying her time, so she had to make the most of every second. Dong Shan and the others were frantic at her move and tried to stop her, but they were firmly entangled in battle. With no further obstruction, when Qin Xian quickly arrived in front of the spirit butterfly-like cauldron. The cauldron was burning with raging flames. Although it didn't radiate high temperatures, it exuded an overwhelming aura of terror. This cauldron had been left behind by the spirit butterfly pill immortal. Even after burning for thousands of years, if one didn't understand the proper method, even a perfect Earth Supreme would be reduced to ashes upon touching it. When Qin Xian stared at the cauldron and took a deep breath. According to the information, the spirit butterfly pill immortal's legacy lay within this cauldron. To obtain the legacy, one had to throw themselves into the furnace. But, of course, this was an extremely dangerous act. The cauldron exuded the aura of death. Even a perfect Earth Supreme would be reduced to ashes by the cauldron's fire, much less someone at her lower Earth Supreme level. When Qin Xian bit her lip, her jade hand clenched tightly. A hint of hesitation flashed across her eyes, but it was quickly suppressed. A determined expression appeared on her face. To obtain the legacy, one naturally had to pay a price. If she didn't even have the courage to take on such a challenge, how could she expect to inherit the spirit butterfly pill immortal's legacy? With that thought, when Qin Xian no longer hesitated, she planted her foot firmly, shot into the air, and in a flash, turned into a streak of light. In the astonished eyes of Mu Chen and the others, she dove straight into the terrifying cauldron that was burning with blazing flames. Although Mu Chen could guess that this was the way to obtain the legacy, he still couldn't help but feel nervous for Wen Qin Xian. A slight misstep, and she could be incinerated by the cauldron's fire. At this moment, the only thing he could do was silently pray that Wen Qingxuan's choice was the right one. At the same time, Wu Tong, who was trapped in the Blackwater prison, suddenly stood up. He looked at Wen Qingxian entering the cauldron, and an eerie expression of anticipation flickered in his eyes. Wen Qingxian, don't disappoint me. Blazing flames. The moment when Qingxian threw herself into the alchemy furnace, a fierce blaze erupted within it. The flames were tinged with a faint azure hue, giving off a soft glow. But those present knew that this softness was only superficial. The flames used by a heavenly supreme for alchemy could incinerate even a perfected expert in an instant, reducing them to ashes. When Ziyu and other strong members of the One family stared at the furnace with immense anxiety, sweat soaking their backs. If Wen Qingxian failed, it would be an unbearable loss. Because if she failed, even Wen Qingxian herself would be reduced to ashes. Dongshan and the others also kept their eyes on the furnace, ready to act at full force should Wen Qingxian succeed. For a moment, the chaotic magma cave seemed to calm down a little, with one notable exception, the battle circle where Mu Chun was. The two martial attendants, having lost all sense of reason, were consumed by pure bloodlust. They paid no attention to the inheritance. All they wanted was to shred Mu Chun into a bloody pulp. But no matter how frantically they attacked, Mu Chun continued to suppress them effortlessly. The martial attendant trapped in the blazing sovereign array was especially struggling, even having one of its arms broken in the process. Clearly, the situation had fallen entirely under Mu Chen's control. It was only a matter of time before the two martial attendants were completely defeated. Boom. Just as Mu Chun kept the two martial attendants under control, a deep rumbling echoed from the depths of the cave. Suddenly, within the furnace that was burning with intense alchemy flames, a low, thunderous sound erupted. Whoosh! In the next instant, the faint azure flames suddenly surged out of the furnace. A column of fire rose from the top of the furnace, and within the flames, a graceful figure gradually became clear. When Ziyu and the others gazed at the familiar figure with sheer joy, that figure was Wen Qingxian. At this moment, her eyes were half closed, her delicate body covered with azure flames. These flames seemed to possess some sort of spirit, flickering on her body and forming emerald green grass. It was like a light armor protecting her, as though the flames were alive. Her long lashes trembled slightly, and the next moment, her eyes snapped open. Her phoenix-like eyes, burning with dancing blue flames, gave her an enchanting and otherworldly aura. She first looked down in slight confusion at the flames on her body. Then, a look of surprise filled her beautiful eyes as she realized that her mind was now filled with a complete inheritance. Even the peculiar azure flames now existed within her body. Clearly, when she made the decision to throw herself into the furnace earlier, she hadn't turned to ashes. Instead, she had received the inheritance left by the spirit butterfly pill immortal. This inheritance contained mostly insights into alchemy and secret methods of pill making. While this may not be of much use to others, for Wen Qingxian, who was a skilled alchemist, it was like a priceless treasure. It was similar to how Mu Chen had gained many spiritual array insights from his mother, which not only allowed him to break through to a high-level spirit array grandmaster, but also paved the way for his future ascension to the heavenly supreme realm. With this inheritance, Wen Qingxian would undoubtedly become a renowned alchemy master in the Great Thousand Worlds, which would be fantastic news for the Wen family. After all, alchemists had always been among the most sought-after professions in the Great Thousand Worlds. The intel was indeed correct. Wen Qingxian was overjoyed, but she also knew that acquiring such an inheritance required immense courage and decisiveness. After all, not everyone had the bravery to throw themselves into the furnace. One mistake, and it would be total annihilation. When faced with the choice between their life and an inheritance, most people would choose their life. After all, without life, no amount of inheritance would matter. Damn it. While Wen Qingxian obtained the inheritance, Dongshan and the others' expressions changed drastically, their faces darkened. If Wen Qingxian had received the Spirit Butterfly Ruins inheritance, then all their efforts would have been in vain. Heh, so she succeeded, did she? From within the Blackwater prison, Wutong watched this scene with glimmering eyes before breaking into an eerie smile. He pinched his fingers, and a black paper talisman appeared in his hand. Strange, mysterious symbols seemed etched onto the talisman, and an unusual wave of energy quietly emanated from it. He raised his head, gazing at Lingxi, then gave a slight smile. The black paper talisman in his hand suddenly caught fire. Ling Shi had been paying close attention to Wu Tong's movements, so when the black paper talisman appeared in his hand, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Without hesitation, she activated the spirit array. Whoosh! Endless black water, carrying terrifying power, crashed down, while countless black dragons surged out, roaring as they charged at Wu Tong, attempting to bite him. No matter what he planned to do, Ling Shi was determined to interrupt him. Quick reaction, but it's useless. However, facing Ling Shi's obstruction, Wu Tong smiled slightly. The black paper talisman in his hand suddenly transformed into dense black smoke, enveloping his body. As the black smoke surrounded him, Wu Tong's figure vanished from his original spot. Qing Xian, be careful. Mu Chen, who was locked in a fierce battle with two martial attendants, quickly spotted the change. His eyes flashed, and he shouted urgently. Whoosh! A wisp of black smoke, like a ghost, appeared in front of Qing Xian. With a swift motion, Wu Tong grabbed her delicate wrist, then swung her up and slammed her heavily onto the alchemy furnace below. Clang! Qing Xian collided with the alchemy furnace with a loud, clear sound. However, perhaps due to her inheritance, the flames swirling around the furnace did not burn her to ashes. Pfft. Even so, the force of the impact still made Qing Xian gasp in pain, coughing up blood. The spirit butterfly alchemy furnace was also sent flying. However, after tossing Qing Xian aside, Wu Tong surprisingly did not launch another attack. Instead, he stopped and fixed his burning gaze on the spot where the alchemy furnace had been. The alchemy furnace had originally been on a stone platform, but as it was knocked away by Qing Xian, the ground beneath it revealed a hidden spirit array. Wu Tong stared at the spirit array, his gaze becoming even more intense. With a flick of his hand, a talisman flew out and landed on the array. Buzz! The spirit array instantly erupted with powerful spiritual light, and the space within twisted as if it led to another place. This unexpected scene caught everyone off guard. No one had anticipated that beneath the alchemy furnace, such a peculiar device was hidden. Qing Xian, did you really think the Wu family's goal was just the so-called spirit butterfly ruins? At this moment, Wu Tong turned around, smiling at Qing Xian. Your Wen family's intelligence was only about this spirit butterfly ruins, but you had no idea that within the ruins, there also lies the inheritance of Xian Long War Emperor, the husband of the spirit butterfly pill immortal. Xian Long War Emperor? Qing Xian was stunned. This was information she hadn't known. However, she was familiar with Xian Long War Emperor. He had been the companion of the spirit butterfly pill immortal, a renowned heavenly supreme in ancient times. Moreover, what made Xian Long War Emperor truly formidable was not only his strength as a spirit-grade heavenly supreme but also his other identity, Battle Formation Master. He single-handedly created a powerful army known as the Xian Long Army. Every soldier in this army had their blood infused with dragon essence, transforming them into dragon warriors. At the peak of its power, the Xian Long Army had made Xian Long War Emperor one of the top figures among the spirit-grade heavenly supremes. However, after a great war, both Xian Long War Emperor and the spirit butterfly pill immortal perished in the ancient sacred abyss, and no further news about them was ever heard. It seemed that the once mighty Xian Long Army also disappeared without a trace. Is your Wu family's goal the Xian Long Army? Qing Xian instantly understood. The Wu family must have somehow gotten wind of the Xian Long Army information, which was why they had come here at all costs. Wu Tong shrugged and laughed. According to the information, although the Xian Long Army suffered losses, since all the soldiers were infused with dragon blood in the final moments, Xian Long War Emperor transformed most of them into undying dragon warriors and put them to sleep. Therefore, the army has been preserved quite well. As soon as it falls into our hands, the Wu family will soon be able to control it. At that point, destroying your Wen family will be a piece of cake. However, the Xian Long War Emperor left behind the Xian Long space, which is protected by the spirit butterfly alchemy furnace. The furnace is surrounded by alchemy flames, and even a grand perfection stage expert would be reduced to ashes if they touched it. Only those who inherit the spirit butterfly's legacy can be immune to these flames. At this point, Wu Tong gave Qing Xian a playful look and said, "So, if you weren't so brave, I would have really been troubled about how to obtain the inheritance. After all, risking one's life like that doesn't really suit my status." Qing Xuan's delicate face turned pale. So it turned out that Wu Tong had been waiting for her to successfully obtain the legacy all along, because she was the key he needed to unlock the mystic dragon space. But if that powerful mystic dragon army were to fall into the hands of the Wu clan, It would be a devastating blow to the Wen family. He must be stopped. Trying to stop me? Honestly, the only reason I've wasted this much breath on you is to keep you from interfering with the stabilization of this mystic dragon space. Seemingly aware of Wen Xingxuan's thoughts, Wutong shook his head with a smile. His gaze locked onto the gradually forming space ahead. Then, turning slightly, he cast a glance at Mu Chen, Wen Qinxian, Luoli, and the others, a chilling killing intent lurking beneath his smile. Once I obtain the mystic dragon army, just wait. I'll come for you. Let's see if you'll still have the courage to stand before me then. Oh, and one more thing, just so you don't waste your time. Only battle formation masters can enter the mystic dragon space. So give up. As for me, it just so happens that I am a battle formation master. Wutong looked at them with a touch of pity. Without further hesitation, he took a deep breath and prepared to step into the space. But in that very instant, a voice, laced with amusement and a hint of surprise, suddenly echoed through the lava cavern. Battle formation master? Huh? Well, what a coincidence. So am I. Everyone looked up in shock, just in time to see Mu Chen, who had been held back by the martial attendants, burst forward like lightning, his figure shooting toward the space. At the same time, a distinct aura rose from his body, the unmistakable battle will unique to a battle formation master.